Hi, I'm Ali Patterson. On this episode of Fintech Finance, we take a look at GDPR. For this, we head over to Barclays to talk a little bit about how this will affect the customer experience. We also catch up with DocsCorp to hear about what they're doing in this remit. And over in the Netherlands, we catch up with Rabobank to talk a little bit around data. Firstly, I caught up with Ben Mitchell from DocsCorp to talk a little bit around the effect that GDPR is going to have on the industry.
So those that are unaware of GDPR will see no change. For those that take the time to learn about it, they'll find that they have a raft of new rights and powers once GDPR is in place. And it's good to remember that GDPR has been brought in for very good reason. It's to protect your personal data and information. And the reasons for that are obvious. If you go and look at your email inbox, as I have this morning, I had a quick look through for emails that I've received from organisations I've never heard of and certainly haven't provided my information to. And there were plenty of them. So despite me religiously checking the box to say I don't want to be added to a mailing list or I don't consent to you providing my details to anybody else, this is clearly happening because many organisations are sending me marketing emails, advertising things that I've never been interested in. So under GDPR, I will have a range of new rights to try and prevent that type of activity, including the right to access. So if I receive such content, I can go to that organisation and request a copy of the information they have on me. I can request that the information is corrected if it's inaccurate. I can ask for it to be deleted. I have a right to portability, so if I'm not happy with my data being stored with that organisation, I can request that it be stored elsewhere. And I also have the right to request a copy of all data held on me by that organisation, and that in particular is going to be a challenge for banks to comply with.
I then went to speak with Ashok Vaswani to talk a little bit around what Barclays do to ensure all their channels communicate together and what this means in terms of data.
So in fact, we treat all of digital together and we build once, which is responsive, so it goes on mobile, and app to web, so it's built once and deployed both on the mobile and on the internet. In fact, our back-end development is all done under what we call multi-channel architecture. That's build once and deploy across all channels: branch, mobile, internet, ATM, phone. So build once, deploy against all 5. So for the most part, if you go to the branch and what our branch colleague would see on his or her desktop or his or her iPad will be identical to what the person on the phone would see, completely identical and very, very close to what a customer would see on online banking and pulled responsively on the mobile. So as far as the customer is concerned, the mobile phone and the internet looks very, very, very similar. So the customer doesn't have to change the way they have to do things when they're interacting in either channel. And if you're really making it that easy for the customer, then why not make it that easy for the colleague? That way you reduce your training down dramatically. And then the colleague can do everything for the customer in a very nice way. Also helps us to move colleagues around. So move colleagues from the branch to the phone, from the phone to digital, and generally get much more mobility.
And that means that they're then obviously more familiar with the branch, more familiar with the phone.
Absolutely.
After speaking with Barclays, I was curious about what this meant on a European-wide level. So we headed over to the Netherlands to speak with Rabobank around the effect that data has on the customer experience, and indeed, even if it's possible to remove the human element.
Data is the basis of customer interaction. I think we make a big thing out of data, but basically when you do a face-to-face interview, you're also reading data and acting upon the data. I think in the ideal world, your automation will do the same thing that we are doing right now. You will get a question, you will answer, and the next question will be ideally based on the answer you gave just before that. And you're seeing more and more of that and getting better and better. I think there are a lot of instances, especially in the service field, where this automated question and answer is being used all the time. And I think the customer doesn't really notice. I think the opposite. When you ask what time will my flight leave, you can have either the agent looking it up and taking the time, or you can have the computer saying, hey, it leaves at this and this and this. By the way, it's 15 minutes delayed. You get instant reply to your question. in effect that's ultimately better. If you take it then one step further and the client says, great, it's 15 minutes delayed, where can I get a sandwich? Then you sort of start reaching the limitations of today's customer experience and possibilities of data, but that will exponentially grow, I guess. In the end, making human intervention only there where it adds immediate value, where it goes into the areas, the more classical areas of banking services like complicated advice and complicated situations. So I think it's an integral part, and it can only get better. It's like the example I gave. I think for a simple question and answer, there's no substituting automation. Computer can do it much faster, much more accurate, much more real time than any human could ever. It's when it gets complicated and there are a lot of variations that there's still a huge challenge. We at Rabobank we take artificial intelligence and chatbots in a really careful approach. Rabobank has always been one of the most human banks in our market area, and we intend to still be that, or at least make that one of our core competences or perceived competences. And we think that also goes for a chatbot situation. So we are looking for really the human touch in chatbots as well. So we take the following approach. We have started an internal pilot with chatbots. So we use our internal help desk system over the 40,000-50,000 people that we employ. They talk to chatbots, and they are now perfecting the way chatbots work in a Rabobank environment. Okay. Next step would be to bring that to the client-facing departments, but only after we first test it on the agents themselves. So the chatbot will give an answer to the customer, but the agents will still be in between and sort of check the answer that the assistant is giving, and then use it or not use it. And by looking at what the agent does, we can improve the chatbot. So the chatbot is monitoring, does the agent give the answer I gave? If yes, yeah, plus for me. If no, then, well, keep on learning. And so we intend to make the chatbot as good, and in the end maybe better, I don't know, than the agent themselves. I've been in this role since last October, and we created the Department of Data and Analytics as a bank-wide department, basically to facilitate just these processes. When you start tackling all the issues that come across data in an environment like this, which is a total data environment, there's no more vault containing bars of gold. There's now only data. Your money is data. So we need to make it work. We need to get the data working for you as a customer and for us as a bank. And to do that, we facilitated that by creating this department that really brings us to the next level on uses of data for the customer, but also for ourselves as a company. So my role is basically to accelerate and to facilitate other domains of the bank getting their value out of data.
I wanted to delve a little bit deeper around the vast amounts of data that banks have on their customers and how they can use analytics to really understand this and how record keeping plays a factor.
So structured information, banks generally have good processes and procedures for storing and protecting that information. Unstructured data is a little murkier. Okay, so unstructured data, I mean documents that have been correspondence mainly that's been transacted between bank and customer. The provisions for storing and protecting that sort of information vary widely between banks. And we've seen a lot of cases where it's not possible to readily put their finger on those key documents. Okay, in particular, documents used to confirm identity, such as passport scans and utility bills. If you're hit with a data subject access request under GDPR, you're required to provide all of that information in a timely manner, and it has to be complete. So having those sorts of documents scattered around your organization in disparate locations is an issue that banks will need to address. The format in which they ended up storing the documents can also now cause problems for GDPR compliance. So if the documents were stored in image format, and we know there are a lot of banks that decided to choose the TIFF image format as their format for long-term data retention. TIFF is an image format and therefore does not include the important hidden text layer that a document needs in order to be referenced by a search engine. So even though they may have a great search function in place, they won't be able to find any of that document content. So this issue has become known as dark data, okay? Documents that essentially can't be found using a search engine.
I think for a financial institution or a bank, one obvious area would be assessing credit risk.
Okay.
That's something you basically want to get right. You think you want to have a company as your client based on the assumptions you make or the assessment you make on the risk this company will bring, and you adjust your pricing accordingly or your acceptance policies. That's something we have a lot of rules for in place historically. But that's something out of data that you can make ultimately more advanced. Looking at patterns, looking at predictions, looking at past behavior, looking at peer behavior. Basically getting a picture of a client before you know the client. That's an area where you see a lot of data initiatives going with us, but also with our competitors. Basically risk assessment as a service. Providing it to ourselves, of course, to get a better portfolio. But in open banking, you could also do that for basically anybody who would be interested in an assessment of a company. When a supplier gets a new client, you want to make sure that there will be a paying client. We could use the data and the experience that we have to basically assist in making that assessment. But also for us, it gives us a better view on the client today and what we expect in the next couple of years, in order to adjust our pricing mechanism, profiling customers on not only their ability to perform today, but also on the road that we think is likely they will go. So will they grow? How will their liquidity evolve? How do their current actions define where they will be in a year or in a year or in 2 years after that? Basically making predictions based on what we see on behavior today of that client, but also of their peers. And data gives you that opportunity, especially for a bank like us, with a pretty big market share in a market that you can, not easily, but you can define. That gives a lot of insights. Yeah, I think that's a big area. I think GDPR is, I don't know about the other European countries, but is an underestimated change in regulation. I think it's. I was at a Gartner summit, and somebody called it the year 2000 in 2080, so the Y2K situation again. Basically, people are underestimating what this could do or could mean for your IT infrastructure, but also the way you're organized as a company. There are a lot of hidden must-dos within that piece of regulation, and I think it forces you to take a customer-oriented view on your data. Basically, it gives the customer a lot of rights. It gives a lot of obligations to the companies using customer data, and that's something you should have acted on, but you need to start acting now. And I think banks have an advantage. We used to be really careful with data to begin with, and that really helps now. I think with us, privacy has always been a main issue. We always say, for us, it's important what you're allowed to do with data, which is regulations. What you can do with data, which is the technology that you have, the data that you have, but also what do you think is ethical to do with data, or what are you willing to do with data? And for banks, or especially for us, that has always been this triangle of decision points where we try to look at what can we do with data and what are we doing with data, what are we going to do with data. And that is now helping us with all the new regulations, but it's going to be a challenge for a lot of companies. Yeah. If you just peel it off on what GDPR is doing, basically they're saying the data is owned by the customer who's provided it. So if the customer wants to do something with the data, take it out, have it deleted, reuse it somewhere else, it's not unlogical that they would be allowed to do it, and the company holding their data would help them do it. So we also talked about approaching the GDPR from a totally different perspective. Hey, how could this be something we could help customers with? How can we be transparent? Yes, for sure, but also compliant not to the regulations but to the wishes of the customer. And I think that for us is now how we define the challenge, but it's still a challenge. because then the technological part is still needed to make that happen. But that's how we try to approach it. We think it's something we can add value to for a customer. We can add value to a customer, and it sort of feels like something we need to do, but not from regulation, but because we want to. Within that, we're searching for the right solutions, right approach. Yeah.
And that's very much the right attitude to have with that. I mean,
it feels like it. If you look at the technological challenges, it's sometimes you wish you didn't feel that way, but yes, I think so.
Finally, I was curious around some of the biggest changes happening in the industry, and indeed the effect that GDPR is having on this.
So there's one particular big change on the horizon, which is a new wave of regulatory compliance in the form of the new GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation. It comes into force in May 2018. It is EU legislation, but unfortunately that doesn't mean the UK gets an out in terms of Brexit, because this will come into force before the UK can possibly leave the EU. So the information from the ICO at this stage, the Information Commissioner's Office, is that UK businesses should prepare for GDPR. A, they will need to comply before Brexit happens, but B, after the UK exit, it is then highly likely that the replacement UK General Data Protection Regulation will be based on GDPR anyway. So there is every reason for UK banks and businesses to comply. After Brexit, GDPR will be copied into UK law, or possibly enhanced further to make it even more stringent. So it's important to remember that GDPR only applies to personal data. Okay, so it's not data protection in relation to any business or corporate organisation. It's information about EU citizens, about individuals. And GDPR stipulates two levels. So there's personal data, which is anything associated or attributable to an individual's name. And there is sensitive personal data, which is a higher security classification. And that's any information that can reveal a person's religious beliefs, financial data, sexuality, right down to their biometric information. So if any organisation is storing fingerprint data or photographs, they are all classified as sensitive personal data under GDPR. Because it's about individuals, this will mainly hit retail banking. And we've seen the protection provisions for personal data in terms of contact details as being reasonably adequate. Where the picture becomes a little more murky is in unstructured data, such as documents that banks store about their customers. Okay, so you sign up for a new account or a mortgage, you are likely to be required to provide a copy of your passport and other personal documents. Where those documents then get stored is we're seeing a wide variety of different locations across banks. Some of them have centralised repositories for this type of information, others do not. And being able to retrieve that content on demand is essential for GDPR compliance.
Oh, the financial services industry is going through a significant amount of change. It is very, very exciting. It is very, very scary as well. But for the most part, it's really, really exciting. I think it all starts with the customer. The way the customer is living his life today has completely changed. I mean, just look at penetrations of smartphones as one proxy. And so the customer is expecting to do all things financial in the same way as he does everything else. And we have to, as an industry, cope up with that. And so that leads to, us trying to create customer experiences which are, make stuff completely instant, make it really, really easy, convenient, transparent for the customer. I mean, if you just see the adoption of how long the internet took versus the adoption of mobile phones and the way mobile phones are going, it's just like through the roof. In fact, what we've seen is, in our business, we've seen total customers going digital increasing very, very rapidly. But within that, mobile is at a much faster rate. And in fact, online and internet is either flattening out, maybe even dipping.
Well, for us, it's most definitely the environment that's changing with, I think, most recognizable, the open banking. Bringing in more and more participants in the sector, also breaking down bits and pieces of what we see as one service up till now. So the amount of competitors is increasing, the consumer is confronted with much more opportunities to do business. And for us, the challenge is to be there, to be present, to remain relevant, and to be relevant for the customer in that context. I think that's number one for us as a pretty big retail bank here in the Netherlands. We are venturing into sort of new areas for us. We actually last week we signed a joint venture with a northern party called Signicat, who are all into authentication, identification services. And that has been a subject that has been really at the top of our minds for the last couple of years from a compliance perspective. The need to know our customers, to understand our customers, to understand their data and keep it in check. Now we're actually in open banking, we see that as a new opportunity. There is a need for parties who can verify, identify and make transactions more easy, more accessible. And we found a strong partner in that. And that's one of the areas we're moving into as a result of open banking.
On the next episode of Fintech Finance, we talk a little bit around customer experience with Nationwide, Metro Bank and Pitney Bowes.